This is the video that is about to go out to the entire world. Watch this right now.
We can't do it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro?
We're going to be in the...
He was not breathing. They attempted CPR along the route to the
K9 have decided to suffer.
Had sex with women.
Can you please?
The reforms I'm proposing would not apply to those who are here illegal.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
They default altogether. It's a total collapse of the system. So usually governments in this situation, what they've done is to monetize and try to get rid of the debt through inflation.
What can the U.S. do next time around? Let's say in 2012 or 2011 or 2010, they can start getting worse. What's the U.S. going to do? Quintuple its debt again?
The purpose of the government is to depreciate the currency, depreciate the value of the money. And who suffers the most from that? Well, the poor people do, because their prices go up.
The Keynesian solution to recessions, remember, the Keynesian solution is keep the boom going somehow. Keep interest rates super low, just keep fueling it. There's no reason that we shouldn't jump off this train, even if it's headed for a cliff. We step on the accelerators, keep it going.
If we keep stimulating, if we keep printing, if we keep bailing out, within a couple of years, we're going to have a currency crisis. And what that means is the dollar is going to collapse, and the cost of living is just going to run out of control.
The Dow Jones is now up 70% from its low in March of 2009. Oil is up 86% from its low in February of 2009. Copper is up 172% from its low in December of 2008. Prices for almost all stocks and commodities have been going through the roof, having analysts on Wall Street proclaiming the recession is over and an economic recovery is here. But how could an economic recovery be here if U6 unemployment is still at a multi-decade high of 16.9%? The truth is, our economy is not recovering. Prices are only rising due to inflation. Our economy is currently experiencing a melt-up. The Federal Reserve has held interest rates at 0% for 17 months. Our financial system has been flooded with trillions of dollars in newly printed money. Those with access to the Fed's cheap money have done well in the past year, with Wall Street paying out record bonuses. This has come at the expense of the rest of America becoming dependent on unemployment checks and food stamps. There are now 39.4 million Americans on food stamps, up 22.4% from 1 year ago. Food stamp usage has now increased for 14 consecutive months. In 2009, Americans received $2.1 trillion from the government in the form of transfer payments, which equaled the $2.1 trillion they paid in taxes. In 2010, the government will pay out more in benefits than it will receive in taxes, and the U.S. budget deficit is projected to reach $1.6 trillion. Government spending has gotten so far out of control that if Americans were taxed 100% of their income, it wouldn't be enough to balance the budget.
Nobody admits that this country's bankrupt, but they're still spending. The worse the problems get, the more they spend, and the bigger the debt gets. And this can't last, and I think the handwriting's on the wall.
When Medicare was created in 1966, it cost $3 billion per year, and the House Ways and Means Committee estimated that the cost would rise to $12 billion per year in 1990. The actual cost of Medicare in 1990 was $107 billion, 792% more than projected, and today it costs $408 billion annually. In 2003, at the beginning of the Iraq War, the White House estimated that the war would have a total cost of $50 to $60 billion. In reality, it has already cost $713 billion, over 1,000% more than projected. The Congressional Budget Office is estimating that the recently passed healthcare bill will cost $940 billion over the next 10 years. If history is any indication, the actual cost of the healthcare bill over the next decade will be many $trillion, making it the final nail in the coffin of the U.S. economy.
It is a bad bill all the way around, and it will hasten the day of the bankruptcy of this country, and the American people will have to face that. So it would be a terrible way to bring this to a head, but indeed it will. It will put us in such financial shape that this country will have to decide, do we want to live in a free country or do we want to live under totalitarianism?
Our economy has stayed afloat until now due to the U.S. dollar's status as the world's reserve currency and our ability to borrow an endless amount of money from China. For many years, the U.S. has been able to convince the Chinese to roll over their maturing U.S. treasuries plus interest into large amounts of new ones. However, China has now reduced their U.S. Treasury holdings 4 months in a row, and the U.S. government is antagonizing China by calling them currency manipulators.
There's this battle going on between the U.S. and China. America calling them currency manipulators. That's for public consumption. Let's say that China readjusts the yuan. You think that the Americans are going to pick up the export market because the value of their currency went up? They'll beat you anyway. As a matter of fact, if they do raise it, then they start buying more of everything because their money is worth more. They buy more gold. They buy more assets.
China has manipulated their currency by pegging it to the U.S. dollar, but it's their currency peg that has allowed Americans to maintain their phony standard of living for so long. If China listens to U.S. politicians and allows their currencies to strengthen, Americans will no longer be able to afford cheap imports from China. U.S. politicians want China's currency to strengthen because they believe it will decrease our trade deficit. Sure, our trade deficit would shrink from Americans importing less from China, but it won't have the desired effect of increasing U.S. exports. Years ago, the U.S. had companies like RCA and Zenith that produced televisions.
The color is true, her hair so red, her eyes so blue.
The most trusted name in television.
But today, there are no television manufacturers left. In 1910, 70% of U.S. women's clothing and 40% of U.S. men's clothing was produced in New York. Today, the textile industry in New York is non-existent, and 34.5% of the clothing purchased in the U.S. is imported from China. Instead of investing to rebuild our manufacturing base, the U.S. government is now spending $1 trillion annually to maintain military bases in 140 countries around the world and fund perpetual wars in countries like Iraq.
War after war after war, and draining us $1 trillion a year to finance our empire, and being in 140 countries and have 700 bases. That can't be sustained. That's what always brings empires down to their knees. It's the financial problems, and we're in a financial mess.
It should be clear to anyone that neither China nor India nor Russia have any interest at all that the U.S. succeeds in Afghanistan. That should be very clear. And so this war in Afghanistan will go on and on and on, and eventually it may very well escalate. And when war breaks out,